So I hear there was quite an adventure last Sunday. I was off in Ottawa running a marathon, and our substitute priest became very ill the morning of, and so morning prayer. And everyone that I heard from after was really happy with how it went and how short it was. So noted. During the summertime, I'm sure sermons will be sermonettes, where, we can bring a thoughtful grain without spending a long period of time unpacking something for you in the heat. This week, we're talking about the idea of law, of Sabbath and rest, and of life. Jesus and his disciples in this gospel story are working on the Sabbath, and that's against the rules. And so the Pharisees of the time took them to task for that. What are you doing working on the Sabbath day? Sabbath is not made for humanity, Jesus says. But humanity is made for Sabbath. Sorry, other way around, isn't it? I'm like, wait a minute. Sabbath is made for humanity, not humanity for Sabbath. There we go. That feels better. Yes, and so the law is supposed to serve us, not the other way around. So the law is meant to bring fullness of life to us, to free us, to enter into the life of God with adventure. And the Pharisees somehow, though, see the law more like a fence that they're going to build around God or the church that keeps people in or keeps people out. Makes it really easy for us to determine someone's acceptability or unacceptability, which is the problem, because they're judging Jesus and trying to put him and the disciples on the outside for doing things that were not customary at the time, for working on the Sabbath, for doing a healing work on a day of rest. But what we see in Jesus' understanding of the law is that it's not like a fence at all. It's more like a fountain in the middle of an open field, where everyone is welcome to come to that space of refreshment, to experience God's grace and forgiveness and community and belonging and home. And, some people stay around that fountain and linger there. Some of us have lingered there our whole lives, right? Some people come to the fountain, have that experience of God, and then find themselves leaving again and coming back and leaving. I think that's just the nature of humanity and God. But that fountain of spiritual renewal is always there for us. And we don't put fences in the way of someone else returning to it whenever they need to. And so this idea of Sabbath is an interesting one, in that Sabbath is meant to give us a space to hit the pause button in our busyness, to kind of get in touch with and make sense of and process what's been going on in our lives. And I think what Jesus is trying to get at in his pushing back to that, like not being able to do a healing work on Sabbath, is that often rest or restoration looks different for each one of us. We find spiritual rest in different ways. I had a lovely day of Sabbath yesterday. I got up and I came and did some gardening work with a group of people here. And for me, that is so restorative. It is a space for me to contemplate and to make sense of and pull together the busyness of my life. So labor is a great way for me to Sabbath sometimes. And then I went from the gardening to a school fun fair, which I know some parents try to avoid spaces like this, but I was there and just loved it. Like, it was restorative for half an hour or so. As a single person who has a fairly quiet home life, it was so, it energized me to be at a fun fair with a bunch of sugar-high kids and bouncy castles and running around and bumping into me, and it was kind of great. and a great hamburger too, thank you. Yes, and so the ways we find Sabbath, are not always stopping entirely. They can be moving and working with our bodies and doing healing works and creative works. But the idea of Sabbath and law and life, as we kind of hold all those things together within ourselves, we start with ourselves. We ask ourselves, what are the things that are life-giving for me? And how do I make space for that? What does rest look like for me? And then we open up that container and say, so what does that mean for us as a community? What are the fences that we need to take down or rejig? And what are the fountains that we need to plant in our community so that people can freely come and experience the goodness of God in community? How do we live that out in a space that is open and eager and welcoming to all who come? How are we a community of faith and of purpose and of respite and of safety and belonging and connection? One of the ways I think that God is calling us to step into, or a space that God's calling us to step into, is one that we talked about at the parish-wide meeting last week or 2 weeks ago. So we are in a space where we're challenged financially, and we're challenged with reaching out to the community around us. Because when I arrived here, there are a few outreach events that we have, but the majority of ministries that we have require that in order for people around us to participate in them, they need to come through the doors of this building. And we're just in an era where that's not happening as naturally as it used to. There used to be a time when the church was the heart of the community. I think we are still the heart of the community. But us holding a service within our building does not draw the people in like it used to. And so the missional model of church is that we take that arrow and we point it out. So we start looking at how we can go out into our community. And we have a wonderful privilege in this place of having that, the space surrounding our building be a wonderful green space on the hill. And so we've been talking as a community about how we can more intentionally use the green space to hold community events and things that will draw the community around us to celebrate itself, but also to experience that fountain of God. So that if they feel like they need to come in, return to, that there's not that daunting nature of having to come through 4 walls or a door into an unknown. And so I'm really excited about where we find ourselves now. And I'm looking forward to where the Spirit takes us in the next little while, to using the resources that we have that are blessings to us and blessings to our community to reach out and build relationships with those around us. So as we are a part of this community here and now, may we know the purpose, may we know Sabbath, and may we know the life that is open to all of us in God. Amen.